Welcome to HCA Talks Health. I'm Zina LaRue, and today I'm talking to the lovely Christine Frey. So Christine is a certified health coach. She's a counselor, and she's also the founder of Glowing Older. So welcome, Christine. It's really fantastic to have you as our guest today, and I'm really excited about our conversation. So welcome to the show.
Thanks, Zina. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you today.
So, Christine, you help to empower people to thrive in midlife and beyond.
Mm-hmm.
And, as I understand it, it's kind of inevitable. We are all going to age to some degree, but is it true that a decline in physical and cognitive health is just a normal part of aging?
Well, the obvious answer is no, it's not. I think we all know and accept that there is an aging process that takes place, that our bodies change, and that our bodies do actually become less efficient as we get older. So I don't want to claim that a 90-year-old body can be as efficient and effective as a 20-year-old body, but that doesn't mean you can't have a fully functioning 90-year-old body and mind. I think the area where we sort of go wrong is thinking that the decline into chronic illness and frailty that we see so much of is a normal part of aging. And that, I think, is wrong. I don't think it's a normal part of aging. I think it's a result of the kind of lifestyles we've developed and become comfortable with. So I will hold my hands up. We're all aging. We're all heading in the same direction. And we can't influence everything, but we can have a huge impact on how we live out those later years. And hopefully that's something we'll unpack as we go along.
Yes, and it seems like you're quite a bit of a living example of this because you are 65, right?
I am, yes.
I know you feel like you are healthier and fitter than you've ever been. So it is possible, or maybe you can share a little bit more with us around that, whether you find that it is possible to, enjoy the best years of your life after 60.
Well, so far. And I think I'm in a lucky position because in the work I do, getting older is actually an advantage. Because I've given talks to groups of people who are in their 80s and they've sort of looked at me and think, well, what do you know? You're only 65.
Oh, no.
So, but my own journey, Zina, midlife was really pivotal for me. Between the ages of 40 and 55, I worked just in counselling and training. And my area of expertise really was how the mind works. So everything from the neck up was of great interest to me. But unfortunately, that meant I neglected everything from the neck down. And I assumed that the way I'd lived my life up until the age of 40, where my health sort of looked after itself, I thought that would just carry on. And something which happened at 55 really told me that wasn't right. I had this wonderful opportunity to go traveling. It was going to be for a year. It turned out to be 3 years. So I gave up work, we sold all our possessions and we set off traveling. But I quickly discovered that I didn't have a body fit for purpose for traveling, because while it's quite easy to do a sedentary job with not such a healthy body, it is not easy to travel with a body that isn't healthy. It needs stamina, it needs energy. And I quickly discovered that I had neither, and that I'd allowed this sort of change to happen without really paying attention. I'd put on 4 stone, I had lots of aches and pains, I had very little energy. And to be honest, the start of my travels was a bit more of an ordeal than an adventure. So I realized I needed to do something about it. But also at the same time, it really sort of started to hit home to me that I was only 8 years away from the age at which both my parents had died. So they died at 63. And I thought, I want more than another 8 years of life. So I had to do a lot of soul searching. I had to make a lot of changes, and I won't pretend it wasn't hard work. It was hard work to reverse it. But I think the thing that really struck me was how easily I'd accepted that all those changes were just part of getting older. I didn't think I had any input into it at all. I just thought, oh, it's because I'm getting older, and I just let it happen. But also, slightly embarrassingly, is how easily I accepted that it was normal for my parents to die at 63.
Yeah.
Which now I'm 65. I sort of think, how could I even think that? But I did. I just thought it was, okay, I was slightly young, but it was just their age. That's why they died. So that period of sort of the first 15 years of my midlife, I went downhill. And then the next sort of 10 years, I reversed it all and went uphill. So obviously, I gathered a lot of knowledge, a lot of experience. I regained my health, my vitality, and I didn't want to put that to waste. So that was when I decided to retrain as a health coach, and to combine all the skills and knowledge, experience I had, and help other people really not to just accept that the changes that are happening to them are their age, because generally they're not. Because if it was to do with age, then I couldn't be fitter and healthier now than I was at 55, and I certainly am. So yeah, quite passionate about it.
So you reversed it all. So I'm very curious about
Yes.
how you did that. Can you share some tips with us on how you
Well,
reversed it all?
I think the first one was the weight, Zena, because, I'd been told so many times that, well, once you hit midlife, you're just going to expand. You're going to put weight on. It's so hard to lose weight once you hit midlife. And I thought, well, I've got to give it a try. But what turned out was I had the wrong information. I was brought up on low fat ideas and calorie counting and all of that, knew nothing about the impact of carbohydrates and what it does to your blood sugar and gaining weight and things. So I was actually thinking it couldn't be reversed. But the truth was, I just had the wrong information. So once I gathered the right information and put that into practice, then the weight did start to drop off. The same with the aches and pains, that was sort of like chronic back pain. I discovered maybe it was because you're sitting around too much, not because you're getting older, and that I wasn't feeding my body properly. So really, we were very lucky that we had time. It was my husband and I who went traveling, and he was a great encourager and is still a great role model to me. He's 70 this month, and he is one of the fittest people I know. So he really encouraged me with the exercise, because that was one of the hardest things, was to get back into building my energy, being able to move again. So it was probably most of the reversal was done in a year, the first year of travel. And then after that, it was just a continually slow process of building up my reserves, really. So getting back those reserves, so that hopefully when the normal aging things happen, I'm coming from a better place. So, that will stand me in good stead to age well.
So you're talking about building up your reserves, and isn't it true how we, from a very young age, we're building up our financial reserves for
Yes,
once we retire. But then when we get there, as you just shared with us, then often we don't have the health to travel or to do the things that we love or that we dreamt of when we were younger. I'm going to do that when I retire. So it's so important, equally important, to also, build up the reserves in terms of health. And I think that's where the difference comes in between lifespan and health span. So it's not just about, if I just take that for myself, it's not just about, I don't want to get very old, but be really unhealthy or ill in my latest year or my later years. So it's really about enjoying a good quality of life as well. So is this something that you also focus on, really creating health and quality of life in the later years? It's not just about lifespan.
Yeah, I don't know how much influence we have over lifespan. That's being hotly debated at the moment as to whether we can influence it. I certainly think we have influence over how fast we age. But the difference between health span, how long we are in good health and able to enjoy life, and lifespan, sadly, the gap is growing. I don't know what it's like in South Africa, but in the UK, the average is about 20 years now between someone's health span and someone's lifespan. And what that means is they're spending the last 20 years of their life really suffering because, they can't do the things they dreamt of. They can't do the things they'd like to do on a daily basis. So, and health span, we do have a big influence over. So if we can narrow that gap and sort of build that health, then we have so much sort of in our later years that we didn't have in our youth, which we can take advantage of if we have the health to back it up.
Yes. So I'm also curious when thinking about from a practitioner's point of view. So you're a health coach, you're also a counselor. So how what it's like to work with older people or people in midlife? What is it like as a practitioner?
Well, for me, it's hugely rewarding because that stage of people's life seems to be when transition happens anyway for a lot of people. For women, there's the menopause. People who have raised families, those families are often leaving home, going out into the world. Things are changing. Most people have qualities they have developed, such as confidence, knowledge, experience, wisdom, and sort of less care about what other people think. And so because it's a period of transition anyway, I think clients come really wanting to change. They come with sort of I can do it attitude. They just maybe need like I did need the right information, the right support to be able to do it. And often clients at this age also have a bit more time. Their families, the commitments are not for everybody, but the commitments have gone down a bit, the mortgage has gone down a bit, they've got a bit more time, maybe a bit more money available. But also, I think it's a time in life when you really start to think, that was my dream, what happened to it? So they start to think again about themselves rather than focusing on other people and careers and things. They start to think about, what about me? What do I want? And if you can pull all that together and support someone to regain their health, then I just think you've got another life ahead of you, because people are living into their 80s, 90s now. And if you've got health, you have a lot of time to do things.
Yes. Yeah. So it seems like there is quite an appetite for change in any case, in midlife.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, I think so. And some of that is forced on us. I mean, I went through the menopause, and for me, it wasn't good. And I don't know how much of that was related to the fact I wasn't in good health generally. But I noticed change was happening that was out of my control. So I sort of wanted to take control back a bit and, sort of make things happen myself. So yeah, I do think there's an appetite for change at that age. Yeah.
But if someone has that appetite for change, you mentioned earlier that some people just don't know what they should do. Should I calorie count? Where should I start? So yes, there's definitely a place for education and sharing knowledge with people out there. But what are the main ways that you work with clients? So I know that you do workshops and I think some one-on-one sessions as well. Maybe you can share with us what is the structure that you use when you work with clients?
I think at the moment it's mostly one-to-one. I still travel a lot. I'm in France at the moment. So 4 or 5 months of the year I'm out of the UK. So I can't do workshops because I haven't yet learned to speak French. So I can't do workshops.
Okay.
So I try to plan it so my one-to-one clients move online if they're face-to-face when I travel, which seems to work okay. And then the periods when I'm in the UK, I try to put together workshops that I think will be beneficial to people. So sort of springtime, autumn time, I do. And my ideal really are groups of about 10 to 15 people. I absolutely love the group dynamic, especially having everybody in the room. I just love that interaction. So I suppose I do an equal amount of both. The workshops are time restricted and the one-to-one seems to work both ways. I think one-to-one they have my full time and attention, so can make more progress maybe.
Mm.
But in the groups, they've got the advantage of learning from other people as well and hearing other people's experience. So yeah, I like to combine the two.
And do you
Yeah.
find that the education or sharing the knowledge with them is enough for them to take that and make the change?
I don't know if it's enough. I think they definitely need something to motivate them, to make them want to put it into practice. But I do think it's a very important component, especially for people my age, because of the environment we grew up in around low fat. Fat is the enemy. Calorie counting, all of that kind of those ideas, which are now not really accepted generally. So I do think knowledge, and also things like the benefits of fasting, in my younger days, it wasn't even a thing. So I think knowledge really is needed in this age group. Yeah.
Definitely. But I mean, you mentioned that they need to be motivated. They need to be connected with their why. Why do I want to do this? What is life going to be different, or how will life be if I make these changes? And that's, I guess, where the coaching comes in, the combination of coaching and education, and how powerful that could be. Right? Yeah. So I want to talk about some of the principles that I know you address when working with clients. And the first one is mindset. And I find this one really interesting because I know in our society as well, often we are conditioned to think about aging and the aging process in a certain way. And unfortunately, quite often in a bit of a negative way. Can you share some ideas with us why you think many of us have been conditioned to think about aging in a negative way?
I think it's more than a little bit negative. I think it is.
Euphemism. Yeah.
Yes, I think it is really negative. But anyway, I mean, conditioning is a big part of the work I've always done in counselling, and always been surprised at how much impact conditioning has on people throughout their adult life. And I think the idea around aging, initially we get our conditioning from our caregivers. So watching our parents age, watching our grandparents age will give us our first ideas about what the aging process is like. But as soon as we go out into the world as children, then society takes over and starts to send messages to us about what aging is all about. And a couple of the examples I use when I do workshops is, the first one is birthday cards. Now, I don't know what it's like where you are, but in the UK, our shops are full of birthday cards, which basically tell you that from the age of 40, it's all downhill, and that there's these awful physical and mental things that you're going to have to deal with. And children see those things, teenagers see those things, young adults see, and when you hit 40, you start to receive them yourself. So this message is coming in, supposedly in a humorous form, but I think it has a much bigger impact than that. But it isn't just that, because they've done research on the words used by governments and the media and advertising around aging. In fact, there was an organisation, a charity in the UK, that did some research on the top 10 most used words around aging. And I think the top 4 were NHS, which is our healthcare system, dementia, challenges, and care. And not one of the 10 top used words when related to older people was used in a positive context. They were all negative. So what we hear in this country is, how is the country going to deal with this tsunami of sick old people? When I think really the question should be, well, what if we didn't have sick old people? What if we had healthy older people? How would society be different? But that's not the message that we're getting. So unfortunately, we are really conditioned to see it. And sadly, we are seeing it in reality, because so many people are starting to suffer as they age, but not because of their chronological age, because of the lifestyles we've accepted and developed. So I think, to me, mindset is the foundation to build upon when I work with people, because if the mindset is wrong, it's going to be very difficult to make progress. Yeah.
And so why would you say it matters? I hear you that it's going to be difficult to make progress, but are there any other reasons why it matters how we think about aging as we age?
Yes, well, two things that spring to mind when you say that. One is that your beliefs actually drive your behaviors. So if you believe that certain things are not going to be possible for you as you age, you're not even going to try them. If you believe you have no influence over your health, why would you put in the time and effort to improve it? So I think mindset, because it's based on beliefs, really is going to impact it. But the research actually also shows that there's a difference in numbers as well, because they did some research on a large group of middle-aged people over 20 years to look at the impact their perceptions of aging had on how long they lived. And it was quite staggering, really, because they found that people's perceptions of aging had more of an impact on their lifespan than their blood pressure, their cholesterol, whether they smoked or whether they exercised. And I found that, I mean, I had to read it several times to even get it to sink in. But they showed that people who had positive perceptions of aging on average lived an extra 7.5 years.
What?
Compared with people with negative perceptions of aging. And I was just 7.5 years. That is a good chunk of time.
Not
So
bad.
mindset really does influence things. Yeah, so that research actually took me several readings to absorb it.
That's huge. So our expectations of aging can impact the way we age and how long we live. It's
Yes,
fantastic
yeah,
to know that.
yeah.
Yes, and we see that. If I just think about the blue zones and the documentary they did on the blue zones, looking at those people, the centenarians, it's often, they their mindset is what stands out, but also their humor and the way they approach life. There's something about the light-heartedness that
Mm-hmm.
is kind of similar between all of them. So I get that, and also people that I know in my own life that turned really old, they all have quite a positive outlook on life. So it
Mm-hmm.
seems like it really is a thing. Yeah,
It is really a thing.
really is a
Yeah.
thing. Yeah. So how would you say, maybe when you work with a client who doesn't have a positive mindset when it comes to aging, where do you start to turn this around? How can we change it if we do have a negative outlook?
Well, I think the first thing for clients is to raise their awareness, because often beliefs operate at a subconscious level. So they
Yeah.
just drive our behavior without us often knowing about it. So really to get clients to explore what they really do believe about aging. And if they're not sure of that, I ask them to listen to the things they say, how they behave, and they can usually quite quickly see that they are limiting themselves with their beliefs. So I think awareness is the first step. And then I also like to get them to start looking for examples that are challenging their beliefs, because the brain, you probably know, filters the data coming in based on what we already believe. We can't handle the huge amount of data that is fed into our brains. So our brains drop all the stuff that doesn't fit into the picture we've got,
Mm.
and allows you to see things that do fit in. So if you think aging is negative, that's what you will see. And vice versa, if you start to look for more positive examples of people aging well, your brain will start to think, okay, that's what you want to see, and it will start to show you those things. Otherwise, you've got quite a biased view of the world around you. So, raise their awareness, get them to challenge their beliefs, and then also the final step is to let them see themselves making changes which go against their beliefs.
Mm.
So, an example in my life is I always believed I couldn't run. Jogging, I'd never enjoyed it. I've never really done it since cross country at school. So when I was 60, I set myself a challenge to run 5K. And it was a challenge, but I did it, and on my 60th birthday, I ran the 5K. So I now believe I can run, whereas
Yes.
previously I thought I couldn't run. So when you make changes like that, you realize how much you're limiting yourself with your beliefs. So I think getting people then to put changes into their own life which challenge their beliefs can really help them develop a more positive view of aging. Yeah.
So it's the awareness firstly, but then
Mm-hmm.
also taking the action to prove yourself wrong, right?
Yes.
And also look for
Yeah.
role models, I guess, out there
Yes. Yeah.
showing you that it is possible to age really well.
Yes.
So you touched
Yeah.
on the brain and how the brain functions as well, and I think that's another area that's really of interest when it comes to aging, is to have a sound and clear, well-functioning brain.
Yes.
And like you mentioned earlier, the words that come up often when we think about aging is Alzheimer's, dementia, cognitive decline. So tell me a little bit more about whether those things are also inevitable. So we know that yes, age is a strong risk factor for dementia, unfortunately, but is it, is it an inevitable consequence of biological aging, or are there some things that we can do to prevent it?
Okay. There's definitely things we can do to prevent it. Whether we can prevent it in 100% of cases, I think would be wrong to say we can, because there's genetic factors, there's lifestyle factors which are out of our control, and the brain is such a complex organ that I don't think there's anybody on the planet that really understands it. If you listen to the experts around the prevention rate, it ranges from 40% to 70% prevention is possible. And if you think there's 55 million cases currently in the world, even at the lower 40% prevention rate, that's about 22 million people who wouldn't suffer that disease. So I think we've got to believe it's preventable. Otherwise, we're not going to put into action the things that can help. And they have shown that even people who have a strong genetic factor, who may have, there's a particular gene, ApoE4, I think it is, which is known risk factor for Alzheimer's. Even people with two of those genes don't necessarily have to develop Alzheimer's. So I think there's a great deal of hope for us. But we definitely need to do things to care for our brain. I think it's an overlooked organ because it just generally doesn't give us any trouble. It doesn't, we don't feel pain in there. It just gets on with life and supports us until it goes wrong. It's also, I think, one of the most frightening diseases of older age that we have. So there's a really strong motivator there, I think, to care for your brain. And in terms of what we can do, generally there's three areas I think we can care for our brain. One is to give it the energy it needs. Our brain can operate on glucose and ketones, mainly uses glucose. So providing it with a regular source of fuel it needs, not an up and down sort of, spiking source of glucose, will help it function properly. It also requires nutrients, plenty of nutrients, and there are certain nutrients known to support brain health, such as omega-3 and B vitamins and things. But I also think, and that's supported by Professor David Smith of Oxford, that taking a multi-nutrient approach to our health, our brain health, is the best option, because it's so complex and we don't really know what's happening yet with all these different nutrients, that if we just make sure we give it plenty of vitamins, minerals, polyphenols, those kind of things, then the brain will know what to do with them and will support its health. And I think the final thing which has been shown, particularly as we get older, to support brain health is exercise in the brain, which may be a strange concept when it just sits inside your skull. But the brain needs to be challenged. It really is a case of use it or lose it with the brain, as it is with many areas of our body. But if we don't learn new things as we get older, our brain will prune away the wiring because it'll think, don't need that anymore, don't need that anymore. So they've shown through research that actually taking on challenging tasks as you age is a really good way to maintain brain health, because your brain has no choice but to build new wiring into the system, which is known to prolong cognitive health. So challenge, exercise your brain is really important as well.
Yeah, but I like what you're saying around the nutrients. Often we feel like, oh, I just need to take omega-3s and that would be okay. And we have to remember that the nutrients don't work in isolation as well as when combined, right? So yes, having a whole foods, nutrient-dense diet, I think could be really beneficial. But then also looking at the supply of energy, and no wonder that Alzheimer's is also referred to sometimes in some circles as diabetes type 3, right? So there's some issue with the glucose and the glucose supply to the brain that could link to memory impairment as well, which is quite an interesting link. But the thing is, like you said earlier, there's lots that we can do throughout life. And also, if maybe perhaps some of the younger listeners out there know that you can start doing that from now on, from the get-go, because you don't just wake up one morning with dementia, right? It's in the making for a few decades. So there is a lot that we can do to help to prevent that from a young age.
Yes.
So another area that I want to focus on, so we talked a little bit about brain health, we talked about mindset, but I think something else that is very important is the movement of the body. Right. And I think especially when it comes to falling and fractures and things like that, it's very important to be strong and flexible and mobile. So tell me a little bit more about how important this is in the work that you do with clients, the movement side of things.
I think it's become increasingly important, because I think, there are a larger number of older people who know what they should be eating. They may not know why, but they know what there is to eat. But I'm not sure they really understand the impact of a sedentary lifestyle on how the body will lose its ability to function effectively. And obviously the frailty you see in later life, I think, is a result of not, again, it's that use it or lose it concept of not actually using your body in the way it's meant, the way it's evolved to be used. It didn't evolve to sit on the couch with a computer. It evolved to be lifting, pushing, pulling, bending, stretching, all of those things. Sadly, our desire for comfort, we're taking those things out one by one out of society. And just the other day, I saw someone press the button and their car boot, the trunk opened by itself and closed by itself. And I was like, that's just one more thing you're taking away from the body being able to do. Anyway, that's going off track. But I think the three things that are important, particularly as you get into later life, is your muscle mass, your bone strength, and your flexibility and balance, because those things combined will, if you can maintain them and even improve them, will give you a body that is functional. And I think that's what we all want, because I know that's what I discovered. My desire to travel was limited by my non-functioning body, or not functioning effectively. And the number of people I see when we are traveling who can't lift their cabin bags into the overhead locker, who can't get themselves up a flight of stairs, things like that, it's going to limit what you can do. So, I would never suggest to clients how they want to live the rest of their lives, but I'm pretty sure they will need a functioning body to do it. So I think those three areas, the muscle mass, the bone strength, and the balance, are really vital. I think that they're more accepted as in sort of something you just have when you're younger, and generally you do. But as you get older, your bone density can decline, your muscle mass you can lose muscle mass. So they become more important, more effort is required to maintain them or even rebuild them.
I've read so many papers saying that you start losing your muscle, I think, in your 30s already. So is it possible to build muscle at an older age?
Well, apparently it is, and there's plenty of examples out there of people who have done it. I know I certainly rebuilt mine, I don't know how much of it had disappeared because I never had a DEXA scan or anything to see what the ratios were. But, you know, I'm definitely stronger now than I was at 55. So it can be done. Yeah. And the other thing that comes up quite a lot in research, I don't know if you noticed, is they love to go into care homes and sort of aged care and get people to do weight training, strength training.
Yes.
And they find that even people in their 80s and 90s can make improvements. You know, I'm not saying none of them are going to be bodybuilders, but it makes a big difference as to whether they can get themselves out of bed and move around the room, even in the final stages of life. So personally, I don't think it's ever too late, but you do have to know how to do it.
Mm.
Yeah.
So that's quite a hopeful part to know that, you know, whatever your age, it can still make a difference.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
of course, our strength bearing or, you know, body bearing exercises could be quite helpful there. But when it comes to nutrition, any other tips around making sure we can build muscle? What do you typically advise when working with a client?
Well, protein is vital for, because it's that combination of strength, weight bearing, exercise, and protein together, because protein signal the muscle to build new tissue. And even though that signal is less accessible the older you get, it's still there. So protein, I think, really needs to be a good part of your diet. And I particularly liked the blood sugar balancing approach I learned from HCA, because protein was included with every meal and any snacks that you're having as well. And I think if you're just expecting to have protein at every meal, you're probably going to get enough over the day. So I think protein is vital. And also, again, vitamins and minerals, but avoiding going down the specifics, which is outside of a health coach's sort of remit anyway. But also, I think you can maybe do a bit of damage if you start loading a load of calcium supplements in or something, because, you know, I do personally think it's better to get it from your food as much as possible.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So how do the you know the people that you work with, your clients, how do they typically respond to increasing the amount of movement that they do? Because I think if you've had a sedentary lifestyle for many decades, then it might be easier said than done. So do you get some resistance sometimes if you suggest
Yes.
this?
Yeah, a lot of resistance. And I think there's a lot of fear there as well. I think some of the fears I've noticed are a fear they've left it too late. That's when I bring in my care home research. You know, these guys were 80 when they started, and in 8 weeks they did this. So just introducing that idea that it isn't too late. So there's a fear of I've left it too late. There's a fear of the effort that is required. The first thing a lot of people say to me is, I hate the gym. Fine, you don't need to go to the gym. Yeah. So what I try to do is start them just with movement. So to separate out exercise and movement and try to introduce that idea of build more movement into your everyday life. Take the stairs instead of the escalator. You know, while you're waiting for the kettle to boil, pick up some tins of beans and, you know, start moving your upper body. There's so much you can do just to move your body at first and start to wake your muscles up before I try and move them into something a bit more resembling exercise. But no, there is a lot of resistance, and I think that's where mindset is so important, because if they don't believe it's going to make a difference, they won't be motivated to put in the effort.
Yeah, they need to be motivated, and they need to understand that it can still make a difference when thinking about their future, right?
Yes.
And the possibility of a healthy future compared to a frail, disabled future. I think we, you know, often when we think about those two options, then it could be quite motivating to know if I make a change today, how it could impact me differently.
Yes.
So just thinking about that and the idea of, you know, you could still be functioning well and you could have a clear, well-functioning mind at an older age. Do you specifically, personally, do you have any role models when it comes to healthy aging?
I have a whole list of
Oh,
people who I use. I tend to look for people not who may have the best looking older body,
yeah.
but people who are living life to the full. And because I do a healthy aging workshop, I have a couple of slides with examples on. And some of my favorites. There's a guy who was a model at 80. I'm trying to think of his name. I've got it written down somewhere. But anyway, he went down the catwalk at the age of 80, bare chested, and if you Google it, it's impressive.
I will.
So I try, and he actually got his pilot's license at 85 as well. I've got examples of gymnasts who are in the 90s, someone running a marathon at 107, and he didn't actually come last. 5 people came in behind him. Yeah. So I tend to use role models of ordinary people doing things that are not expected in later life. For example, in the field of psychology, which is something I'm really interested in, is Edith Egar and Gabor Mate, who work with trauma. One's 80, one's 97 now. I think both are still working, both are still vibrant and alive. Wow. And that's the picture I try to find for my own role models and to share with my clients as well, and especially people who have started later in life. I've got an example of a woman who published her first book on her 100th birthday, and you sort of think it's maintaining that zest for life, that passion for life, because that's equally important as all the other things you're doing. So generally my role models are, I don't know if I should call them ordinary people, but no, not famous people, well-known people, but just people who are doing extraordinary things in their 80s, 90s, because my question is, if they can do it, why can't I? Or why can't you? So I'm getting quite a big collection now of people.
Fantastic. Yeah, so they're still contributing to society in such a meaningful way, right?
Yeah. Even and enjoying their life, really getting the most out of life, and obviously have a positive mindset. Yeah.
Okay, that sounds fantastic. I'll definitely gonna Google the
80-year-old I'll send you the name.
Yes. Please do.
Yeah.
So Christine, we've touched on quite a few elements today, and I think it's a really great message that you're putting out there. I think it's a message of hope, that there definitely is lots that we can do to impact our health span and the quality of life as we age. And it's really lovely to get a feel for how you're enabling your clients to really start believing again that I can create a second, the second half of my life could be every bit as good as, if not better than the first. Right?
Yes, definitely.
So is there anything that you feel like we still need to touch on, or maybe any last words of wisdom that you want to share with us before we finish off?
I think I like to be realistic, and I like to share with people that if you go down this path, you will be going against the norm.
Yeah.
And hopefully that will change. But currently, the norm is you stop learning, you stop moving, everything slows down, you disengage from life very slowly. Sadly, that's what is around us. So I think people do need to know that it's not the easiest journey. You will have to make time and effort to do it, but the rewards are huge. When you think of that difference between health span and lifespan is currently averaging at 20 years, that means 20 years of suffering that you instead can have 20 years of vibrant life. And that's the one I want. So, you will be going against the grain. You will have to find out the information. You will have to change your environment. You will have to change how you live life. It's still enjoyable. The food is still delicious. The movement becomes easier. It's nice to feel strong. It's nice to feel that you can still do whatever you choose to do. But you will notice that you're standing alone a lot of the time.
Yes.
Yeah.
So where can clients find you if they want to find out more?
Well, my website is glowingolder.uk, so they can find me there. And also I'm on the UKI HCA website, listed on there as well. So, and I think if they just Google my name, it's just not
Find
a
you.
common name, I might pop up.
Easy enough, eh?
Yeah.
So, yeah, thank you so much. And it's lovely to get to know you a bit better and to see how you truly are a living example of the joy and the fulfillment that we could still experience as we age. So thank you for putting this hopeful message out there. And I want to end off today with a quote that I actually got from your website, from Scott Fitzgerald, who says, "I hope you live a life you are proud of. But if you find that you are not, I hope you have the strength to start all over again." I think it really sums it up so beautifully. It is lots is possible. There's always still is hope. Small action steps that we could take to make a huge difference for the second part of our lives.
Yeah.
Thank you, Christine.
Zena. Thank you for having me. I've really enjoyed our chat.
It's been lovely. And good luck with all the future endeavors. And
thank you.
If you have a passion for health and wellness and you would like to make a difference in the lives of others and discover a new rewarding career in health and well-being coaching, visit www.healthcoachesacademy.com to find out more.